This podcast may contain morbid and disturbing past accounts. Listener discretion is advised. This is Scarlett.
And I'm Echo.
And welcome to the strange, the weird, and the unforgettable. Echo, are you a fan of American Horror Story?
I absolutely am.
Would you say you've watched almost every season?
To a point. I missed Roanoke, and I think I missed half of Apocalypse, and
Okay.
I think I missed half of 1975 or whatever it was.
Okay. But you've seen Hotel.
Absolutely.
And how did you feel about American Horror Story, the Lady Gaga's Hotel season thing?
I actually really liked it.
Did you? Because honestly, that was one of my favorite seasons. And I didn't know this until, recent. But you know how American Horror Story has this habit of throwing in like characters based off like real people or like real events in their own words kind of ordeal.
Yeah.
So the whole season of Hotel was based around one hotel that has had the weirdest history, the most morbid history, and downright unexplainable events happen in it. And that would be the Cecil Hotel.
Absolutely. I knew this.
Well, I'm trying to decide if we should start in the past or just come out and talk about, like, maybe we should get, like, the most well-known thing about the Cecil right now out of the way. And then, like, go back to the, like, older stuff that happened before this event.
Yeah, just in case for some reason anybody isn't sure what this place is just based off the name of it.
So Elisa Lamb. That's who we're gonna discuss her first. And she had some really strange things happen to her in the hotel. And there was some strange footage released before she was ultimately found dead in the hotel on the rooftop in one of the water tanks, sadly. And this all happened in 2013, so not too long ago. She was a 21-year-old college student. It was a very gruesome discovery after the guest made complaints about lower water pressure. Yeah. And the coroner listed it as an accidental drowning. But the thing that people point back still to this day is the elevator footage of her going in and out of the elevator. And if you haven't seen this, there is no clear way for me to explain exactly what happened in this footage unless you look at the surveillance video. And if you haven't seen it and you're listening to this episode, I'm very shocked because I even remember seeing this footage. Now, part of me seeing this footage for the third, fourth, whatever time, I recently saw it back when we did the Paranormal Games episode because the elevator game was one of the games that we had talked about.
Yeah.
And a lot of people like to connect that with what had happened because when she entered the elevator, she pressed a whole bunch of buttons and people try to say that she's playing the game. And honestly, I don't want to get too much into the case because I'm going to tell you guys right now, there are a lot of better true crime podcasts and YouTubers that have done really good with her case and looking into all the facts. Stephanie Harlow has a really good YouTube video on it, and I very much so am going to point you guys in that direction. But I'll give you the broad overview that the article kind of had, was that she was panicked. She was pushing several buttons. Then she leans her head out of the doors looking for something, nobody knows what, or someone. Then she hides in the corner. And then at one point, it appears that she is talking to someone off camera. And then she does something where she's moving her hands. And people say that her fingers look abnormally long when she's rolling her arms and hands around outside of the elevator before she steps back in. Um, there are theories that um, she was being chased by a potential killer, because they do say that if you're staying in a hotel and you feel like you're being followed, that when you get into the elevator, you should press the button for multiple floors. That way, you are stopped both before and after your stop, so that you're stopping on multiple floors, so that if somebody is watching the elevator numbers, they're not sure exactly which one you were on.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Exactly. And the other theory was that she was suffering a manic bipolar episode. A manic bipolar episode. And there are some, like, she was on some medicines at the time and things like that. But again, if you want to know more, and I kind of want to get more, like, give you guys a broad overtell of all the stuff that have happened in this hotel. Because to do that story justice, it would take one whole episode, if not two. And then it would take an episode for everything that possibly happened. And I want to give you guys just the majority of what happened at this hotel and why it is so notorious. And again, we don't know her personally, but we can vouch Stephanie Harlow's YouTube videos. If you are into true crime, they're really good, and she did really good on this case. I promise you. I watched it again recently. Just because she goes into some of the history about the hotel, and she really tries to find all the facts. Now, she talked to somebody. She talks to a lot of investigators and stuff. And hey, a lot of people think that, and investigators even think that maybe the footage from the elevator was tampered with and cut by somebody either working at the hotel or the police department to cut out potential, like, important fact stuff or what have you. But that is one of the things that have happened. That's like one of the biggest things to recently happen at the Cecil Hotel. Um, and I, tonight, actually had started watching the Ghost Adventures visit the Cecil Hotel. And they get some really interesting findings. And actually, Zach gets in the elevator and does the elevator game, spooks himself, gets off the elevator at the first floor, watches the elevator go back to the 7th floor, stands there freaking out as Zach does in the show.
Oh, yeah.
You know. And then gets on the elevator and goes all the way back up to the 7th floor. So, you know, and looks around. And they did have some stuff happen, and maybe I might, like, touch on, like, little points, but I don't want to ruin it for people that want to watch it.
Yeah, for sure.
I know it is, I think that one's specific to Discovery Plus, but that's where you can find it. At least that's where I watched it. No sponsorship, just telling you where you can find it. But yeah, very interesting. And this whole, like, if you were to read, like, if somebody were to make a broad sentence or paragraph about all the things that happened at the Cecil Hotel, you'd be like, okay, you're telling me the plot of a TV show, or you're telling me some outlandish book or something. It's unbelievable the amount of stuff that has happened in this hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, when researching it, it made American Horror Story Hotel make so much more sense. And all the things connect way better. Now, there's no real life vampires, or at least to everyone's knowledge, that were actually at the Cecil Hotel. But there were serial killers. I will tell you that.
Yeah, not just one, multiple.
Exactly. One of the biggest. I think you actually watched a documentary on him.
Yes, recently. I was recently watching that.
was Richard Ramirez, known as
the Night Stalker.
exactly. And actually, it is said that he spent nights there during his killing sprees. And it was like well reported that he often stayed at the Cecil Hotel. Why? Because at that point, this beautiful building had been switched to offering rooms for only $14 a night back then.
Yeah.
This building, let me pull it up, but I want to describe to you this building and kind of what happened before we get to the point where somebody like Richard Ramirez can just waltz in half naked to go to his room. And that is actually something that was fairly well reported. He would strip down outside, throw his bloody clothing in the garbage, the hotel's garbage, the big hotel dumpster, and then walk in half naked and go to his room. And nobody blinked an eye because at that point, the hotel was occupied by many a people and drug dealers and homeless people and just partiers, anything and everything. Like that hotel was batshit crazy at that point in time.
Yeah.
And so nobody blinked an eye when this man walks in half naked to go to his room.
Just a normal Wednesday night.
So, the Cecil Hotel, Los Angeles, one of the most iconic landmarks because what it's famous for goes on behind the closed doors. Okay. And this was built in 1927. Mm-hmm. And it was a luxury hotel. But it became a victim of the Great Depression just a few years later. And the area that it was in was where I think they call it Skid Row.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm glad you remembered because I was like, mm-hmm. I think.
Yeah, that's what they call it.
So that's where a lot of the homeless people in LA would gather and stay on the streets and things like that. And when it opened, it had a beautiful Art Deco style. I mean, even some of the video footage in the Ghost Adventures special, like when they were walking through, like, and just, because they do those really artsy shots in those TV shows where they're like showing like the skull. It to me, like, okay, say what you will about like old like fads, like, the Art Deco style and shit, but it's still gorgeous in its own way. Like, it was still really like, even hotels that I go into now that are big, that have the ugliest carpet. They have the ugliest carpet ever.
Even the nice hotels these days are just so bland.
So look, I'm gonna like, this is relevant in the way of expressing how I feel about some hotels that are grand. There's one here in Indiana called the Belterra. And it's got a casino. The part of the casino like floats on the river, so it's legal and stuff. And the carpet when you walk into the Belterra is atrocious. It's pretty. It's a pretty hotel when you walk around, but the carpet is atrocious. So, I mean, every luxury hotel has its downfall, let me tell you, because I've seen plenty. But this actually, to me at least, not from the outside, but from the inside, some of like the sculptural parts of it were beautiful. There was a lot of stuff happening at this time. At that time, and it being on Skid Row, and after all this stuff happened, Richard Ramirez, because I have this thing about serial killers, and I've told Echo this. I don't like calling them by their alias because I think some of those people lived for that. Okay.
Oh, yeah. And Ramirez definitely was one of those ones who did.
So You know, when we called him hit earlier, it was to make the point across of who it was. But I'm going to tell you now, we're just going to call them by their name on this podcast because fuck giving those people what they want. Yeah. They've lost the right to have what they want. In my opinion, okay? To a degree. Like, okay. So, he was a sadist, obviously. You know, he used handguns, knives, machete, a tire iron, hammers, and he did murder his victims. And his crimes were brutal. So during this, he stayed at the Cecil Hotel so often. And like I said, the rooms were only $14 a night. And back then, that was easy to come by. Like $14 a night was easy to come by back then. I mean, it was, you know, it's not the equivalent of like now paying like hundreds of dollars to stay in a hotel. I think the last time I stayed in one, and the cheapest one I've stayed in was like 53, and it was sketchy as hell.
Yeah, for sure.
But the area around this hotel. So let me set the scene for you back at this time period, okay? Back in 1984, 1985, the area around it was populated by, you know, junkies and dealers and, you know, everything that accompanies that, you know.
Yeah.
Along with, you know, the homeless population and a variety of things. So it would make it really easy for him to do these crazy outlandish things like come into the hotel half naked or whatever, because they've probably seen stuff like that before. It was probably so less of a suspicion than a man coming home half naked. Yeah. You know? And he stayed there. But, you know, he wasn't the only serial killer to stay there. So 6 years after he was caught and captured and whatnot, a journalist by the name of Jack Unterweger, was a guest at the Cecil Hotel in the early 1990s. And, you know, he paraded as this man who was there to write about LA crime and look into all the stuff that had happened and maybe write about Richard Ramirez and all this stuff. But this man had a dark past of his own. Very dark past. He turned out to be an Austrian serial killer. And he committed his first murder in 1974. And, you know, he came here and he could use his status as a reporter to secure rides with the LAPD.
Well, isn't that awkward for them?
And would drive around areas that would soon later become crime scenes of his. Yeah. And he was known for strangling his victims by using their own lingerie. And he had a very distinct ligature, so a very distinct knot that he would tie. And it led him to being the prime suspect of 3 homicides in the LA area that they ended up connecting him to the other murders in Austria.
Sucks for him.
Because this asshat used the same tie every time. But, you know, that's what they do. They have a signature, and God forbid they variate from the thing that makes them, you can't see this, but I'm doing quotation marks, special. You're welcome.
Oh, goodness. Also, super glad that the LAPD got their shit together by that time.
We don't talk about them. Sometimes they make me frustrated. Oh, Lord. So after he was caught, though, in 1994 in Miami, that's where he was arrested. He he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, which he deserved. And on the night of his sentencing, and that's my opinion, okay? In my opinion, that man deserved that punishment. You know, it was a very fair punishment for the things he did.
Yeah, he was definitely lucky not to.
So on the night of his sentencing, he actually hung himself behind bars using the same type of knot that he used to strangle his victims. Now, if you're anything like me, this is where I'm going to take a moment to talk about the hotel again. I mean, this all relatively comes back to the hotel.
Yeah.
But I believe when a person passes on, dies, whatever you want to say, that if their spirit is going to stay behind, it is not necessarily, unless it's a freak, you know, unless it's like a brutal or a freak accident in like a specific place. I feel like if they're gonna stay behind, it's going to be where the majority of their energy is located, like the majority of what happened. So, do I think that these serial killers are possibly haunting the Cecil Hotel? In my own opinion, and I have not been there, so I can't like say for sure, but I think it is very possible to say that these men went back to haunting their, you know, I'm going to put quotation marks up again because I hate calling it this, but their hunting ground, the area in which they looked for victims or spent their time waiting for their next victim.
Yeah.
It's very possible to believe that these people do haunt that hotel, or that they did something in that hotel. Like Richard Ramirez, he was a Satanist, or Satist. Like Richard Ramirez, he was a Satist, Satanist, whatever.
Satanist. He was both.
He was an asshole. He was an asshole, an asshat. Why not both? You know, there's nothing saying he didn't do some kind of weird ritual or something in his head that opened something there. And that could very possibly be a thing too.
Yeah.
He was still alive behind bars when Lisa Lam went missing and then was later found dead. What was it, a couple weeks later?
Yeah. It took them a while to find
her. But he was still behind bars at that time and he was still alive. I mean, he's died, but he was still alive at that point. He died in 2013.
Okay, so same year, but a little while.
Same year, but he was from what I read, he was still alive at said point. But we're gonna talk about one now. We're gonna kind of get into the weird things that have happened there, because this place. Well, first, before we get into those, I'm going to tell you a speculation that is being said, but cannot be confirmed. And it kind of puts me in an feeling, because I don't put much stock into it. Because you know how when strange stuff starts happening, people start like all these like coming forward and just saying whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, with certain events. There are rumors that Elizabeth Short, aka the Black Dahlia, stayed at the Cecil Hotel.
Yes, I have
before she shortly died. But it is speculation and like hearsay. There's nothing saying she did or did not.
Yeah.
I mean, it is very.
I'm sure they don't have the records anymore.
Probably not. But, you know, I'm not putting 100% like fact into it. And I don't 100% believe it. Like I said, I still haven't finished the Ghost Adventure special, and they brought it up in there too. There's nothing saying that something won't happen before the end of that makes me think different.
An entire episode around the Black Dahlia as well.
I do need to watch that. Yeah, so we'll see if my opinion on that changes. Echo can ask me next week during her episode if my opinion on that changes. But I don't know. I'm very skeptical of that one because I don't know. I feel like if it were like an actual, like, if it were 100% an actual thing, there would have been something else said about it. Yeah. And how very lucky she would have been to make it out of this crazy hotel if she would have stayed here. Like, I don't know. I mean, she had an unfortunate end.
Oh, yeah.
But it didn't happen here. So, yeah. We're going to talk about, before we talk about some of the murders that happened inside of the hotel and some of the suicides, and then I kind of touch upon a couple things that caught my eye in the Ghost Adventures episode. And take it for what you will if these, I know everyone has their own opinion on the paranormal shows, and, I think they do elaborate a lot and, dramatize a lot and things like that. A little bit over the top more than, what I would do. But then again, I'm not the one standing there at that point in time.
Yeah.
And I know how creeped out I get when I hear stuff here. And I'm not agging, but I also don't egg things on because that's one of my rules. So I'm hoping I'm going to say this name right. And if I don't, Echo will probably fix me and
I'll try.
Repeat me after the end. George Giannini, and I hope I said that correct. He had one of the strangest deaths connected to the Cecil Hotel. So this poor, and I don't mean poor as in had no money. I mean poor as in the circumstances that happened to this man.
His poor soul.
This poor soul. He was 65 years old, and he was walking past the Cecil Hotel. Now let me rewind to another person connected to this. Pauline Oten. Pauline Oten. She was 27 years old. And this all happened in 1962. She had been arguing with her estranged husband in a room on the 9th floor of the hotel. And after Oten's husband left, she wrote a suicide note and then jumped from her window to the pavement below. And unfortunately, George was walking directly below when Oten landed on top of him, and they were both instantly killed.
Well, definitely sucks for poor George.
And definitely an odd coincidence. Okay, like, if this were the only odd thing to the hotel, you could be all like, okay, that was just really, really poor timing on that man. But with all the other stuff, you kind of just go,
Was it a coincidence or?
Yeah, it was odd. So, my cat's meowing really loud outside my door. Okay, so when the police first arrived at this crime scene, and you can't blame them, they thought it was a double suicide case.
Yeah, I mean, why else would there be 2 dead bodies?
However, George's hands were still in his pockets.
Yeah, and that's a weird way. You wouldn't just casually jump out of a window with your hands in your pockets.
Which is very inconsistent from a fall from 9 stories above.
Yeah. I'm sure the impact would have blasted the hands right out of the pockets, too.
So after much police work, the truth was discovered that, and it was the case of a suicide that caused an accidental death.
Poor George.
Now.
He didn't do no wrong.
We're going to talk about a bunch of suicides that also happened in the hotel before we talk about some more deaths, because, we've kind of started down that path. In 1931, a guest, W.K. Norton, who was 46 years old, was found dead in his room after eating poisonous capsules. So this was the earliest case of suicide at the Cecil Hotel, but it would not, unfortunately, be the last.
Yeah, seeing as poor George got smoked with another suicidal body.
So in the following year, a 25-year-old Benjamin Duchin was found by a maid in his room, dead by a self-inflicted gunshot to the head. Which there's not a whole lot about that one, but it always astounds me how the maid finds the self-inflicted gunshot wounds in cases that happen in hotels, because you think that noise would alert everyone in the building.
Yeah, you would assume,
or at
that,
least in the next several rooms.
Yeah, a neighboring room would have heard something, unless he just so happened to be the only person staying on that floor at the time.
But even so, if there was somebody in a room above him or below him,
yeah,
I don't know. I don't design these buildings. And then in 1934, a former military medical corps sergeant, Louis D. Burton, was found with his throat slashed. And he had written several notes about suicide while in the room.
I don't know. I feel like slitting your own throat is kind of an odd way.
That's an odd, yeah, but I think...
But not unheard of, but I definitely don't think it's very common.
Well, and I'm
for people.
That early, okay. DNA testing is like a whole new thing.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of the forensics is newer.
Oh, yeah.
And you were talking about 1934. I mean, if they found notes, I'm pretty sure the police are just going to say done, solved case.
Yeah.
Unless there was somebody coming forward saying, so and so had it out for them. Are you sure?
Yeah.
Now tell me, I don't know if this inspired. Okay. I don't know if the way this person died inspired a character from American Horror Story Hotel, because if you've watched it, the hotel is inhabited by ghosts, vampires, and actual humans. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the ghosts are people that have died on the property, and some of them are serial killers.
Yes.
Right? Yes.
And if they weren't in life, they definitely became them in death.
But in 1937, the body of Grace E. Margro, and I hope I said her last name correctly, was discovered in the telephone wires after she jumped from the 9th floor window. And for some reason, maybe it was the recreation, you know how when they do crime shows sometimes, or they talk about the history of stuff, they do recreational things.
Yeah.
For some reason, that made me think of the one from American Horror Story in that season.
You're thinking of Sally?
I think so, but she was pushed. She was pushed out a window.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, in general, the whole hotel season was based off this hotel. Mm-hmm. So they could have just been let's make a character that died under really weird circumstances. Yeah. And then this one was pretty, I mean, all of them are terrible, but this one was pretty disturbing for a very specific reason. A year later, so that would be 1938, the body of 35-year-old U.S. Marine Roy Thompson was found on the skylight of a nearby building after he jumped from his room.
That's definitely weird too.
I don't know how well skylights were made back then, but in my mind, I feel like if somebody jumped and then fell onto a skylight, I
Yeah,
want to
that
say the
also.
skylight might break
Yeah, you would think, but I guess it also just depends on like
on the height,
on how far he fell,
how he
and
landed, and things like that.
yeah,
Which, by all means, we're trying to be the most respectful that we can be. We're not making fun of anything. I'm just
yeah,
stating the
absolutely
facts and pondering on some of the odd like coincidences around them, like the fact that he landed on a skylight, yet the skylight didn't break.
yeah.
Which again, like Echo said, it depends on height and all kinds of things. So I can kind of get it. Then in 1939, naval officer Erwin C. Nieblet was, and I hope I said that right, was found dead after ingesting poison. And he was 39 years old. So
That sounds familiar.
I know. And I'm not saying by any means everyone is going to get creative that decides to go down this road. But the fact that most of them were jumpings and poison
Yeah,
is slightly interesting, I guess. Um, and like, there's just a lot, and these deaths were just a few of the suicides that occurred at that point in time. I'm gonna save one of the most like heartbreaking ones for here in a little bit, um, because it's truly one of the most heartbreaking stories that happened. But let's just go back over everything. We've talked about the Lisa Lamb disappearance and death that they ruled an accident. We've talked about how Richard Ramirez stayed there.
mm-hmm.
We talked about Jack Untenberger, is that was,
Mm-hmm.
and how he stayed there. So, two serial killers there. We've talked about numerous suicides that have happened on this building. And we've talked about the lady who caused an accidental death when she jumped from the window committing suicide. That's already a lot. And a lot of this seems to have happened around the same time. Now it's not uncommon for morbid things to happen in hotels.
Yeah,
For numerous
um,
reasons, and I think we should point that out as well.
yeah. I think the only reason like you don't hear about like more suicides happening in like every hotel there is because like they don't want that publicized. They don't want.
Well, it's a number of they don't want it publicized and being respectful to the families,
Yeah,
especially when it's a cut and dry, like there was notes, there was proof, whatever.
yeah.
Now we're gonna talk about a man who decided to open fire from the rooftop of the Cecil Hotel.
Oh, good lord.
Jeff Thomas Paisley terrified guests of the Cecil Hotel and, the lovely passersby when he decided to go up on the roof and fire off several shots from a rifle in good old 1976. Now, thankfully, he didn't hit anyone, miraculously. Um,
Yeah.
and he was arrested by the police shortly after it began. And after he was taken into custody, he told police officers that he never intended to harm anybody. And he had spent, before this happened, he had accordingly spent time in a mental hospital. And he wanted to prove how easy it was for somebody to buy a weapon and go up and shoot off shots. And he did all this to demonstrate how easy it was for somebody who was dangerous to get their hands on a weapon and take out a large number of people. But why the Cecil? Why
Yeah.
this one specific
Why the
hotel?
Cecil for what? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what draws people to this place?
What drew me to this place? I said something. Okay, we're gonna touch on this really quick before I get into more of the stories. I said something earlier to Echo, and I think it was yesterday, and I kind of saw the color drain from her face as I said this sentence, and I heard the words that she was talking to me, and I thought I've said the wrong thing. So originally, this week was going to be Helltown, Ohio, which is has all kinds of rumors and folklore surrounding it and what happened. And I told Echo, I was like, I was gonna do Helltown, but something drew me to the Cecil Hotel, and her face just went pale. And she goes, "You better hope, or I hope you don't mean that you're gonna go to the Cecil Hotel." I said, "No, something drew me to researching
I
it.
would I
Not
would
going there."
never, ever stay at the Cecil. Even though they're remodeling it, even though they're making it nice again, I will never, ever stay there.
But yeah, I think Echo's the one that would keep me from going any place that might actually be harmful. Because all I have to say is I'm thinking about going here, and I can just tell by the look and the tone that that's a bad idea, and that she will not let it happen.
Nope.
So
You're not taking me with you.
there was an unsolved murder that did happen at the Cecil Hotel of a lady that was very well known around there. She was Pigeon Goldie. Uh, and it still haunts the Cecil Hotel to this day. She was a retired telephone operator, and she had a very recognizable face all around the hotel. She protected and fed the local pigeons, which is how she got her name, in Pershing Square. And in 1964, she was found dead in her hotel room. She had been assaulted, stabbed, strangled, and trigger warning, she had been raped. The room was ransacked, and they the police found a Los Angeles Duggars cap and a paper bag full of birdseed. One of the suspects that was arrested was 29-year-old Ellinger, Ellinger, who was seen walking around Pershing Square wearing bloody clothes. He was charged for the murder, but later he was cleared. This was the last widely reported death at the hotel until the Lisa Lamb. This was the last widely reported death at the hotel until the body of Lisa Lamb was found in 2013. So, one of the most disturbing and the one that bothered me the most events that happened inside the Cecil Hotel. Um, Not that any of the things that have happened so far have been light or jolly or anything. Was an event that happened in 1944. So, and it happened to the youngest victim at the Cecil Hotel. And they had their life taken from them. So, Dorothy Jean Purcell was 19 years old, and she was staying as a guest in the hotel with her boyfriend at the time, who was 38 years old. And he was a shoe salesman, Ben Levine. And apparently, she didn't know she was pregnant. And later that night, while in the hotel, she went into birth. And not wanting to wake Levine, she went into the bathroom and delivered the baby by herself. She believed the newborn boy, baby boy, was dead. And she walked to the window and threw her newborn son out the window, claiming that he was a stillborn. She was arrested, but the psychologist determined that she was mentally confused when she was eventually found not guilty by the reason of, I think they said, temporary insanity.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that too.
Now, let me make sure there was no other things I wanted to touch on before I touched quickly on because we've been going at this for a while. Before I touch quickly on the Ghost Adventure stuff, and then we'll talk about current weird news if there is any, since we didn't do that at the beginning of the episode. And then we'll just give a rundown of anything else we need to tell you guys. So, one of the creepiest things that have happened, and you can watch this, it was reported on the news. And this is a creepy thing not involving like an actual person. So, in 2014, a young Californian boy captured an apparition of a ghost on camera. And the picture appears to show a transparent figure standing on the ledge outside of the window of the fourth floor of the building. The photo was soon picked up by several news outlets. The possible ghost was quickly linked to the gruesome past of the Cecil Hotel. And the young photographer told the reporters, and I'm going to quote this, "When I looked at the window, it just looked kind of creepy to me. And then I showed my friend and he freaked out. It just creeps me out still." And he claims it caused him a lot of restless nights.
Oh,
so
sure.
This hotel has been considered, one of the most haunted in Los Angeles. So I'm going to kind of touch on the Ghost Adventures. I'm not going to ruin too much about it because, you guys, I don't want to ruin it for anybody who wants to watch it. But this is a spoiler alert, so skip ahead if you don't want to hear any of the stuff I'm getting ready to tell you guys. That kind of, and I feel like it needs to be talked about because some of it makes me feel a certain way.
You feel some type of way?
It makes me feel some type of way. And so when they first start and they're walking through, and in the trailers, Zach even brings up the fact that this may very well be the last time that they allow anybody inside of the Cecil Hotel. Not inside. This is the last time they will allow cameras inside the Cecil Hotel. He said it's like the last time they're going to permit anybody with cameras inside of the hotel, blah, blah, blah. And then it begins, and they start in the rooms that Lisa Lamb had stayed in, and the room that Richard Ramirez rented a lot. And guys, I haven't finished it, but as with a lot of their specials, they brought in, psychics and things like that, and they were all getting vibes. If anybody on here or that is listening watches Ghost Adventures, you are all familiar with Aaron. He's been around since the beginning. He's just as memorable as Zach. And fight me. He's just as important as Zach. I will fight you on that. Come at me, bro.
I absolutely adore Aaron.
Aaron is never violent. I've never seen that man be violent or in somebody's face during an investigation. Have you?
No, I can't.
He's not an aggressive person.
Yeah, I remember there was one episode where something got to Nick, and he started to get hostile, but I don't remember ever seeing Aaron get hostile in an episode.
Well, Aaron gets he's getting the feeling of hostility in this one.
Oof.
Zach had brought some pictures that Ramirez had drawn in gel and brought them to the. Oh. Yeah, I know. There's so much wrong with that. And
I know he's all about using trigger objects, but like.
Yeah, there's a line. And at one point, Aaron while he was feeling hostile, he goes, "I want to smash those." I got so angry, I wanted to walk over and just stomp those. And he's not that type of person. And he said at one point there was a noise that happened, and it made him want to tackle everyone else in the room. So I feel safe saying that if Richard Ramirez or something he summoned is still around, it is at that hotel.
Yeah. I would almost bank more on like something that he tried to summon.
I don't know. It could be both.
Yeah.
To be honest, because.
But there's some sort of influence.
Well,
that
because
has to be connected to him.
well, and I'm saying that I almost feel like he might be there because one of the people that was with them, right? Um, he he told Zach Richard says hi or Ramirez says
Gross.
hi. It was one of the two. And
That
it
makes me
just
feel yucky.
yeah, Zach got scratched because of it.
Yeah.
And another thing that I wanted to point out, because I'm not going into all the details, if you want to know everything that they caught, you can watch it. Another thing that happened while they were there was a lot of people just wanted out. There was a detective that they had walking them through the building. He wanted out. He spent like 2 seconds in the Lisa Lamb room and left. There was a lady that they were walking through. She helped them with, I think, the Black Dahlia case, and they brought her in to
Yeah.
see, I think, if she could fill her there.
Mm-hmm.
And the lady and Aaron at one point both got really close to windows. And the lady actually started opening one of the windows, and she leaned her head out, and Zach said, "You're going to close that window right now, and you're going to step away from it." And he pulled Aaron away from the window, and
Mm-hmm.
she kept going, "I want out, I want out, I want out." And then they caught a figure on their one. I don't know what the machine is, but it's the one where it has all the dots and like you can see like the
Yeah.
stick figures. They caught a figure
So the
standing.
SLS.
Yes, I think so. They caught a figure standing like in the windowsill when she was saying that she wanted out.
Yeah.
So it's safe to say that I'm pretty sure there's something going on with this hotel. I,
Mm,
I'm I'm
I would
I'm
absolutely say that there's definitely
fairly
some dark
certain.
influences there.
Exactly. There's something. Um, but yeah, unless you have anything, Echo, because I know I kind of like railroaded this whole one. Do you have anything to add to the Cecil Hotel, or were you just taking in all
Um,
the facts that I found?
just kind of taking it in. You touched on a lot of like pretty much everything that I've heard about the place.
And
Um,
like I said, you guys, we just wanted to give you like it came down to me because I was the deciding factor for this episode. And like I said, there's a million things we could go into. We could have branched off onto Richard Ramirez. We could have talked about, the the people, in their past lives, but it would have either made for a really long episode or multi parts. And I think to get the overall feel for the hotel, it's more of a broad view of everything that happened
yeah.
with the majority of the details. But yeah, it was, and the serial killer thing, that's just two of the ones that they knew about. They're,
Yeah.
the way it sounded, at least to me, was the way the place was being ran and how cheap the rooms were. A multitude of people that they
Yeah.
will never
I
catch
mean,
connected to cold cases could have stayed there.
yeah, any number of violent individuals could have used that as a headquarters of
E-
sorts.
exactly. But yeah, I don't know. One of the weirdest facts that I didn't know about the hotel that I found was that Richard Ramirez would sometimes strip down outside and throw his dirty blood
Sure.
soaked clothes into the garbage and then walk in.
I don't know
I was
for
just like,
sure that I had heard that before, but I am not surprised.
I've heard it
He
several
was a
places.
he was a freak.
I heard it several places. And it was one of those facts that just makes you go, oh,
Yeah,
you know.
it makes you feel yucky for
It's
sure.
it's like when okay, I get the same vibe from that as I get when people sexualize serial killers. Like I
Oh,
personally think that is one of the most
that's so
disgusting
yucky.
things you could do.
So yucky.
It's so gross. Okay, it's so gross. And there's so many Twitter posts. You guys don't know how many Twitter posts I go through on my Twitter and on the group Twitter, and I just heart things that are like, can we stop sexualizing serial killers now and things like that? Because I'm like, these people have valid points.
Yeah.
So I went to get my mail from my mother's. We're gonna switch topics. I got a little story to tell. I went to get my mail from my mother's today because I am lazy and have yet to change my address, which I was living there, so I can still get my mail. So it's not an issue, okay? It's not an
Yeah.
issue at the moment. And I get there, and my mom asks, okay, my mom doesn't understand Twitch at all. I've explained it to her 3 times. She still don't get it. I told her I was excited because I got my logo, and like this is like just a side like story of everything that happened while I was there. And she's like, I still don't understand what that is. I'm like, I get paid to entertain people. That's what it is. I get paid to go online and do silly voices and be crazy and play video games and just be silly. And she's like, okay, well, I still don't get it. I'm like, of course not. So I showed her my logo and said, look how family friendly it is. I can wear it to, my other jobs and all that stuff. And she's like, it is cute. I'm like, yeah. And she goes, I said, well, I gotta get home. I gotta finish getting stuff ready to record tonight. And she goes, well, what are you guys talking about? That's what mom knows about the podcast. It's crazy to me that she can understand and comprehend YouTube. And she can understand and comprehend
YouTube, understands podcast.
a podcast. But the idea of somebody live entertaining people on Twitch by playing video games and making art stuff just escapes her. But she asked what we were talking about, and I said, oh, the Cecil Hotel. And I was telling her, kind of about it. And she goes, and then I told her how we were gonna eventually do Helltown because that was something we were gonna do, and then it kind of got like pushed to the back. And she goes, I don't get why you and Lisa just don't go to that place in Kentucky. I said, you mean Waverly, Mom? Yeah, that place. And I took a deep breath, and I wish you guys could see the face I'm making right now because it encompasses every face that I made in the possible 2-minute conversation, if not a little bit longer, that led to. I just took a deep breath, and I looked at her and I said, Mom, I would bring something the hell home.
Yeah.
And she goes, I know you wouldn't. And I said, Mom, I bring shit home all the time. I bring shit home all the time. I never told her that I was 90% sure that I was the one that brought something to their house one time.
Yeah.
But I digress. We had a 10-minute conversation on how Waverly was probably the last place Echo and I would go.
It just doesn't feel safe. Although with your spirit attracting energy and my spirit repelling energy.
I know, it's like you're my own little personal safe bubble. Which is always fun.
Seem to like me. Like they don't want to be around me, and I don't know.
I'd rather them not want to be around you. Could you imagine if we had 2 magnets? We don't need 2 magnets. We need 1 magnet and 1 repellent so it equals out the fucking world, okay?
Yes.
That's why Echo and I would make such a great ghost hunting team. Because I'd be off in the corner shitting myself because I'd be witnessing shit and she'd be off in the other corner and nothing would be happening. And it'd just be 2 polar opposite worlds.
Just like, come at me, bro. And they're like, nah, that bitch crazy.
And in this relationship, I am the Aaron.
Yes.
You go down to the basement and see what's there.
They'll like you.
Well, I was just like, I just stared at this woman like, you've gave birth to me. You've taught, like, you have instilled in me the paranormal stuff, like, since I was a kid. Okay. I can 100% say, and I believed my grandpa. My grandpa, like, hardly ever talks about his family at all. Mm-hmm. And when my grandpa told me I had it's either a great grandmother or a great grandmother that was a 3-foot tall Native American woman, I I didn't question it because that man hardly talks about his personal life. So when he said it, I believed it because why would he tell me something that's not true when he barely talks about it? Like if he were going to make up something, he would talk about it all the time. But
Yeah.
I did a 23andMe for Christmas, and North America just lit the fuck up. I was like, okay. I mean, of course, I'm European too, but
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, I can definitely say now for sure that I'm part Native American. But my grandmother believed in a lot of the stuff, and I spent a lot of time with my grandmother. So the whole paranormal thing to me, it's never been a question of does it exist. It's always how how much of it is where kind of ordeal.
Yeah.
And I respect people's opinion that think it's nothing. I'm not going to argue and fight all day and say no, it's 100% real. Believe which one at the end of the day. Personally, for me, it's what makes sense. Somebody liked my tweet. Sorry, I kind of got off topic. But my mom's like, well, what if I just personally want to go to walk around like during the daytime and get a historical tour? I was like, I can tell you everything you want to know while you sit right here. Just sit right here. I'll tell you everything. You'll be good. It's one of those things like in my brain, I know I shouldn't go. You know, I'm like, okay, like given everything that has happened, I should not go to Waverly Hills. But then in another part of me, it's all like, but I kind of want to. And it's
Yeah.
like,
I mean, it
it's
would be cool to
okay.
see, but at the same time, would it really be worth it?
Listen, you guys, if we go, here's what I promise. I promise we will record what we can with my nice, lovely night vision camera that I bought for Ireland and took literally like 7 videos while I was there. And, I will take Echo so she can be my repellent. And I promise that I won't let her shove me at the ghosts if things get shit. If things go to shit,
Come
she's not allowed to
on.
say, take her and let me go. And talking about that brings me to like 2 really interesting upcoming topics that might happen recently because I go down the YouTube rabbit hole like nonstop. And sorry if you guys hear ice. I'm so thirsty. But they had went over on one YouTube video all the relics that Zach has that you have to sign waivers for to be able to look at his museum. One of which is the Divic box that he has. And
Yeah.
it is said that this Divic box and people say that you can't just want one. That if you're meant to have one, it'll come to you. And so that always okay, with the amount of paranormal stuff I attract on a normal basis, that always worries me because I'm like, I don't want to go anywhere that I know has one because what if for some reason it wants me? I don't want it.
Yeah.
That's slightly concerning to me, okay?
Yeah.
And then the other one was a doll. You have to sign waivers to see both of those things. And I just be like, no, no, thank you, Zach. I don't want to see either.
Yeah.
I don't want to see either. No, thank you. And then well, obviously Waverly, because we talked about it a lot. But there was another one. Pacific Box, Waverly. I feel like my brain crashed in the middle of the sentence.
Yeah. I'm sitting here trying to think of something else that we.
I mean, I have a neat fact I could tell you, but it has nothing to do with this stuff. Did you know dyslexia can affect your speech as well as reading? Like, there's new research about it.
Nice. Which explains a lot.
So I'm twice as fucked. The Dybbuk box. Oh, doppelgangers. That was the other one I was thinking of because of Waverly. Any weird news?
I have not heard anything bizarre.
Any more randomly appearing baked potatoes?
No, I have not heard any more on the baked potato sitch.
No baked potato sitch going on?
Yeah, no more library lawn baked potatoes.
if you guys are interested in checking me out on Twitch, maybe Echo and I can put together an event because Echo's usually either in my chat on the side in the stream playing a game with me where you can hear her or talking to me while I play a game while she's in my chat. Echo kind of helps balance my stream a little bit when I get like overly stimulated, which happens a lot. And we will get looking at Steam and I will have Echo put together a list of all the games that she can find that are based off of paranormal games.
Okay.
And maybe we'll make that a strange, weird, and unforgettable. Like, and have her in the voice chat, and we'll play some like computerized versions of the paranormal games, and just have like a event on Twitch if you guys want.
Because I know for a fact that there is a computer game version of the Midnight Man game.
You guys will get to see me jump out of my skin like I usually do, and Echo will set off sound alerts like she usually does.
Yeah.
Echo likes paying money to scare me.
I do.
But yeah, okay, so we'll go over it. We have a Twitter at Strange Weird UN1. Not the best at posting on there. We will work on that. I need to get Echo like learning how to use social media a little bit better.
Yeah, I have social media. I just don't really use it.
Yeah, and I'm trying to balance this social media and my streaming social media and all the other stuff that I have to do. It's a lot. Also, we have a Instagram, which we're a lot better at posting pictures on Instagram because I think I try to put one out when I release a specific, like when we release a podcast of pictures specific to the podcast. Might try to get some of the Cecil Hotel and stuff like that. It is under Strange, Weird, Unforgettable. It'll have our logo and everything on it. We have a Facebook page that is Strange, Weird, Unforgettable Podcast. Haven't really been active on there since I did the Merry Christmas thing. If you have a story,
it's only been a month.
I know that makes me feel a little bit better. If you have a story you want to share right here on this podcast for us to read, or recommendations, or anything that you want us to know, you can send that to at swustories@hotmail.com. If you want to make sure you catch all of our podcasts, follow wherever you listen to this podcast with your ears. Please use your ears and not your butt. Guys, keep it weird, stay strange, be unforgettable, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.